Yeah, welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a pretty interesting show for you here today. Going to talk hail to the victors. Michigan Wolverines are finally national champions of college football once again. But before we get to that, if you haven't already, you know what time it is. If you're here on YouTube and you haven't, please go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, that notification bell. Make sure you kept up to date whenever we drop new content on the channel. If you want the audio only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in the Format Podcast. We should come right up. If you're enjoying the content, give us that 5-star review, give us that like, and make sure you leave us a comment. All that stuff helps us rise in the algorithm. We are that close to the magic 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. We're almost there. So keep doing it. Keep sharing, keep watching, keep liking, keep subscribing, doing all that stuff. I really appreciate it. And we're going to get to that point where we can start doing these live call-in shows, and I can definitely talk to you guys and have the opportunity to really get into it some more, and we can take this show to the next level for 2024. So again, thank you for all that you do, and let's get right to it. All right. Jim Harbaugh, Michigan Wolverines, arguably the biggest story in college football this year, right? We look at the last 15 years or so in college football. Let's see, what is this, 2024? So we look at the last 15 years or so, 2000, and we could probably go back over the last 20 years, right? We have had very few college football national champions that don't come from the South, right? Or don't come from the SEC. The majority have been from the SEC. You've had LSU, you've had Florida, you've had Alabama, you've had Georgia now, and then of course you've had Clemson from the ACC. But the vast majority have come from the South, and the vast majority of those from the SEC. And as such, the SEC's kind of been regarded as the best conference in college football. Now, on its face, you can't really argue that. But this show isn't about that. The last time a Big Ten school won the national championship, or Northern school period, was 2014 in the inaugural 14 college football playoff, and that was Ohio State that basically went on that rampage through the playoffs. Ohio State beat Alabama, and then they beat Oregon for the national championship. That run right there got Ezekiel Elliott drafted high, and obviously paid quite well with the Dallas Cowboys. But now we've got a different representative from the Big Ten, right? For a while, Ohio State's pretty much been the only Big Ten school that most people thought was on equal footing to stand up to the SEC in terms of athletes, in terms of physicality, and have an opportunity to win those type of games. But now all that's changed, and it's the Michigan Wolverines, who have been in the college football playoff for 3 straight years, who have won 3 straight Big Ten championships, and who have beat their hated rival, nemesis, whatever you want to call it, the Ohio State Buckeyes, for 3 straight years. And last night they won the national championship in closing out an incredible 15-0 season. But this championship isn't like most of the other championships. And why is that? It's because it's been this team and this program and this school have been wrapped in controversy all season long. And if you don't follow college football, the reason for that is the NCAA has been really on top of the Michigan program, because Jim Harbaugh and the school were basically, they're being investigated for alleged recruiting violations during the dead period during the COVID year. And as well, they have been and they are being, investigated for allegedly doing illegal spying, kind of like a Spygate type thing with the New England Patriots, if you remember that. But basically having a former staffer who's no longer on Michigan staff illegally videotaping and stealing signs for other opponents and possible future opponents. And basically that goes against the rules, which is very interesting, because basically everybody who's involved in football says that sign stealing goes on and has gone on for the longest time. But apparently Michigan was the one who got caught, and as such, a lot of people feel like they were cheating, they were dirty, and this championship is tainted, blah, blah, blah. So crazy thing about this is Jim Harbaugh, he was suspended the first 3 games of the year for the, I guess, what do you call it, the impermissible benefits, or the recruiting violations during the COVID dead period. And then he was suspended for the final 3 games of the regular season, which were coincidentally Michigan's biggest games of the regular season. And that was Penn State, followed by Maryland, followed by, Ohio State. And then they went on after that to beat Iowa in the Big Ten championship. But yeah, Jim Harbaugh was suspended for 6 games out of the 15 this season. And the crazy thing is, while all the people on the outside were talking and saying this and saying that, it almost seemed to bring the Michigan team together. Offensive coordinator and offensive line coach Sharon Moore did an outstanding job coaching in the absence of Jim Harbaugh. Defensive coordinator, some might say mastermind, Jesse Minter did an outstanding job really scheming up the defense, one of the best defenses in the history of the college football playoff. They're a top 5 defense scoring wise, I think, all time in college football history. And so, they're really up there with elite company, giving up about 10.5 points per game this year and shutting down some very elite offenses, along the way. But you watch this team, and it's funny because if you watch the show last week, Ryan and I were on, and I actually picked Washington to win this game because my thought was, and I guess I was looking at this from the NFL perspective, that generally when you have better quarterback play, you are going to win more times than not. You have more better quarterback play and a more explosive offense, right? But what do I always say? Run the ball, stop the run. Those are the tenets to having success in football on every level. But I drank the Kool-Aid and I was amazed. Now, don't get me wrong, Michael Penix Jr. is absolutely amazing. Heisman runner-up quarterback Michael Penix Jr. of Washington. He is amazing. He's been amazing. And I think he's going to be an outstanding pro. But at the end of the day, I always say that the key is run the ball, stop the run. And with that, Michigan and Jim Harbaugh built an old school type attack and an old school type program built on physicality in the trenches, offensive and defensive line, playing outstanding defense and being able to effectively run the football and grind your opponent into dust. And that is what they have done. They have strangled you defensively and they have physically punished you until the body blows added up and you couldn't take it anymore. And they did that to every opponent they played this year, right? And so I was under the impression that Washington would have won a close one because they had a better quarterback play and the more explosive offense. But the fact is, that's generally the winning formula in the NFL. And it's interesting because a few years back, maybe 10 or a little more than 10, 15 years back, we started seeing NFL coaches and NFL franchises start taking more offensive schemes and offensive mentality in terms of more athletic quarterback play, more wide open offensive schemes, air raid and the spread and those things, and really start incorporating them into their offensive systems on the professional level. And with that, along with some rules changes, the offense, the game of football on the NFL level really started to go towards the offense. Now, even though a lot of that stuff came from college, it was funny because around the same time, the college game flipped back. Now you still see a lot of high flying explosive offenses, but what the best teams are those teams that are dominant in the trenches, can defend and can run the football extremely well. And so it's amazing that I, Mr. Run the Ball, Stop the Run, drank the Kool-Aid and picked Washington. And Michigan did exactly what I've always talked about doing and what makes success. They ran the ball for 303 yards, over 200 yards before contact yesterday, which is absolutely absurd. They averaged almost 9 yards per carry. Blake Corum led the way with 134 yards. Donovan Edwards had over 100 yards. Both of them had 2 rushing touchdowns. And so you saw it. This program was built exactly the way Jim Harbaugh has always built his programs, whether it was at San Diego, whether it was at Stanford, whether it was with the San Francisco 49ers, taking them to 3 straight NFC championship games and 1 Super Bowl appearance against his brother, by the way, and now Michigan. And he built a team that was set to deal with Ohio State's speed and their high-flying passing offense, and he created it to be able to slow them down and beat them. And now he played a team pretty much built in the same manner as Ohio State in Washington. And I don't know why I didn't think about that when I was making my pick. But at the end of the day, Washington, although they had an incredible season, they just didn't have enough. They couldn't deal with the physicality. And Michael Penix Jr., amazing quarterback though he is, was never able to get comfortable in this game. he was 27 for 51 for 255 yards. He averaged 5 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown pass and 2 interceptions. So not at all the type of game that you would expect from Michael Penix Jr. Rome Odunze, he had decent numbers on his face, 5 catches for 87 yards, 17 and a half yards per catch. But for the guy that I believe is the best wide receiver coming out in this draft this year, Michigan and Jesse Minter did an outstanding job of bracketing him and really controlling him and keeping him from becoming the weapon that he's capable of in this game. And so you just saw Michigan do what Michigan does, right? If you listen to the Joel Klatt show, and that's Fox Sports One college football analyst Joel Klatt, he talked all year about Michigan's defense being a boa constrictor, how they slowly but surely squeeze the life out of their opponents. Meanwhile, they're just landing body blow after body blow with that run game, and they did not get away from their DNA, right? Quarterback J.J. McCarthy was 10 for 18, 140 yards. So not an outstanding game, but guess what? He made the plays when he needed to. He made a couple of big throws. He made a couple of big runs with his legs, and all that stuff helped Michigan to win. And so when you see 34-13, now don't get me wrong, the game wasn't a total blowout. It was well contested until into the fourth quarter. But at the end of the day, Michigan was just too big, too strong, too physical. Their run game was too dominant. Their defense was too dominant. And they are now 15-0 and the international champions. So now you wonder what's going to happen with Michigan going forward. They're back on top of the mountain. This is their first sole national championship, I think, since 1948. The last national championship they had was 1997, and they shared that with Nebraska. So you wonder, what is going to go on with Michigan, because they may have, 17 or 18 guys drafted this year. That's a lot of talent that's going to be leaving that roster. And are they going to be able to immediately refill it, whether through the transfer portal, whether through recruiting? Not sure, because it's funny. Recruiting has long been the lifeblood of college football. And you look at the Alabamas and the Georgias and those teams like that, the Ohio States, they have elite recruiting. But Michigan won this national championship and went 15-0 with only 2 5-star recruits on this roster. What does that mean? That means that they built the roster, they developed the players that they had, and they turned it into a well-oiled machine. So now the question is, if you're Harbaugh, do you stay? Obviously, the NCAA's got investigations going on. Who knows how that's going to play out? The old expression is strike while the iron's hot. The iron probably can't get any hotter for Jim Harbaugh right now. He brought his team back to relevance, the highest level of relevance, right? They're the national champions. His team, his school, his alma mater, and he did that for them, like he said he would when he came back there to coach them. And now we know that there are a number of suitors in the NFL. You got the Raiders, you got the Chargers, you got the Commanders, you got the Panthers, you got the Falcons. There are a number of teams, now the Tennessee Titans, that are looking for a head coach. And we know that Jim Harbaugh is one of the best head coaches in football, whether now it's college or the pros. So this is going to be very interesting to see where this goes, how it ends up, what happens. But for right now, all we can say is, and these guys earned it, no matter what anybody thinks about, oh, they cheated or what have you, because once Connor Stalions was going off that staff, they didn't miss a beat. Their head coach was suspended. They didn't miss a beat. They just came together. They kept dominating, and they did what they do. So all anyone can say at this point now is, hail to the victors. Who's got it better than them? So what I want to know from you is, do you think Jim Harbaugh is going to leave and head to the NFL? How good do you think this Michigan team is? Do you think if Georgia was in the tournament, in the Final Four, that they could have beaten Michigan, or whether or not Michigan would have still won the championship? Go ahead, leave your comments in the comment section. Can't wait to hear them. Can't wait to get back to you on the next episode. And I'm out. Peace.